Sorry guys, hold on a second. I am completely, hold on. Sorry, I was all ready and then it said I needed to rotate my phone. Sorry guys, totally a mess, not planned. I don't like that it does this to me because then I get it all situated and then I cannot ever get it correct. Hi. This is a bedside chat. Totally filterless, about to go work out. But I wanted to pop on here because I was getting some comments about some confusion about the interview I did with Katie's brother and the story I shared about Katie's dad and his Japanese heritage. So some of you guys were like, well, was that story made up? No, not at all. So there was some confusion because Katie's brother, Reed, said that Corey, her dad, is not Japanese. And so when he started seeing the rumors flying around that Corey was Japanese and that Katie was part Japanese, and then everyone was saying that they could tell that she was Japanese, and he said, no, she's not Japanese. Corey was just adopted by a Japanese family. So people were like, did you make that up then, Katie? And I'm like, no. So I shared on Instagram, and you guys can go check it out if you want, but there is a movie that Corey made, and hi. I'm trying to see if I can find a filter here. I don't have good lighting in here. You don't have good lighting. Ooh. Okay. So people were, and I'm apologizing ahead of time. I'm trying to like stabilize this camera. Okay. I'm gonna do my best to keep this. Okay, so, okay. Anyways, people were asking me if this was made up. No. So what the deal is here is that Corey wrote a blog on his nakatsus.com. Sorry, let me see if I can stabilize this better. Corey wrote this thing on his nakatsus.com about his grandmother, and he wanted to do a testimony, like he wanted to make a movie about his grandmother's life. And his grandmother was, in the blog, he referred to her as a picture bride. And he, during this blog, did not say like my adopted grandma. He just said my grandmother. And he talked about like what a cool matriarch she was, and that her story of her immigration to the United States was like amazing. And he wanted to do, thank you, Catherine, for your super chat. And he wanted to do something that could like sort of share her story. And he was particularly interested in sharing her journey here, and then to also talk about the experience of the Japanese American immigrant during the World War II, the individuals that were not part of the internment camps. So some people that were of Japanese heritage or lineages or immigrants, they were during World War II placed into internment camps because we were at war with Japan, and there was a lot of racism, and his grandparents were not placed in the internment camps. So he wanted to share their experience because it was difficult, because they had a hard time getting food, and there was a lot of people that they had everything like in zones, and you couldn't travel to certain places, and he just wanted to share that aspect. Again, at no place in time in there did it say that he was adopted. Then, as I was doing just like some background on his grandmother, which the video is actually a public video, and so if you go to my Instagram, you'll see that like this is a movie. I think it's on Vimeo, Vimeo, where he uploaded everything. And it's about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. It's actually super interesting. You learn a lot about his grandmother and his grandfather. And anyways, he shares his experience, and a big part of that whole documentary is him talking about the arranged marriage of his grandmother and his grandfather, and this fact that his grandmother was what he called a picture bride, where in the video that he made, or the movie that he made, he explained that immigrants during that time were not able to go, like they had cut off immigration, I believe, in some capacity. And so for new people to immigrate, specifically people that were going to be married, the only way that they could immigrate is if they were married to someone that was here. And so the men that were here would be arranged with women in Japan, and then the families would exchange photos, and then they would come to the United States like carrying a picture. And so she came to the United States with a picture, and she met her husband, and they got married on like immediately when they met at, I think she came in through San Francisco, Angel Island. And yeah, so he was really interested in that. So when I shared that story, it wasn't like me being like, oh, this is false, because Katie's brother was like, oh, well, he's not Japanese. He has no Japanese in him. So, oh, Maria says my mom was a picture bride, or I should say my father was a picture groom. So absolutely not. I just didn't know he was adopted, but that doesn't change the fact that Corey grew up with Japanese parents, right? Or Japanese grandparents, because he's still adopted by them. So even if he doesn't have, like, I guess, biological, like, heritage or ancestry from it, adopted, he grew up with the Japanese culture, and he grew up with a dad that was 100% Japanese. So if your father that's adopted you legally is your dad, and he happens to be Japanese, of course you're going to be immersed in that. And as a child, that's who your dad is, and those were his grandparents. So I don't think that changes his experience. It just means that, I guess, his DNA doesn't contain actual Japanese blood, I suppose, or Japanese lineage. Would that be a better word? Yeah, Japanese lineage. So no, DNA wise, he doesn't have like lineage from there, but he grew up with them and they legally adopted him. And it's when I saw his dad's there's no documents that say, like, you know, his adoptive son, like the obituary doesn't say like his adoptive son. It just says his son, Corey. I mean, because it is his son, right? Once you're adopted, that's your child. It's not like your parents run around and going, this is my adopted child. Most parents that adopt children say, this is my child. And you treat the child like your own because they are your own, right? Anyways, I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a made-up story, and he did make the movie. So if you want to watch the movie, I posted a little clip of it. It's actually on the thumbnail. You can see it. But if you go to his blog, he has a whole blog about his grandmother, and then you can Google his name, or you can Google his grandmother's name, and you can find the video. But it's like an hour and a half long. So he is definitely... He made the video. It definitely had stuff to do with, he was very intrigued by the arranged marriage of his grandmother. A big part of that video is about the arrangement, how the arrangement took place, what the customs were around the arrangement. He spent quite a bit of time talking about the customs in inheritance within the culture from where his grandparents came from, and why his grandmother came here. It was a very interesting look, and for me, I just enjoyed learning like that family's history. I think anytime you have a family that has dynamic roots and a unique story like that, I find it fascinating. And I love learning about people that basically change their entire lives by coming to a new place. So the interesting thing is that even though his grandparents were arranged, they loved each other. They went on and had like 9 kids. Her grandfather was apparently very supportive and like awesome to his grandmother. They had a great relationship. He seems to really have fond feelings for his grandparents, both of them. The grandmother was described as like this like fierce, intelligent, smart matriarch. And the grandfather was described as sort of this quiet, steady, encouraging guy in the background that kind of supported and took care of the family, but was supportive of his grandmother. And they owned a market and ran the market for years. They farmed. They had an interesting life. So people were saying that, also confused that me bringing up the arrangement and thinking that his ties to arranged marriages could have come from his grandparents. Somebody said that was super like culturally insensitive, but honestly, he spends so much time talking about it in that video that it does seem to be something that has influenced him, that he found fascinating by. And I think he liked the idea that his grandparents, despite the fact that they didn't know each other, made the arrangement work. And that was something that he was drawn to. Now, if that influenced if he wanted to play a bigger role with Katie and Jed, I don't know. But he was definitely influenced by his grandparents who were arranged, and he was it sounds like he greatly admired them, which is great. Like, I was watching that thinking, gosh, I wish I had grandparents like that, you know? So either way, the story is still true, even though DNA proves otherwise in terms of like his lineage is not from there. So I hope that makes sense. I'm not trying to spread misinformation. So I also don't want to diminish the fact that just because someone's adopted, that doesn't, like, you can't erase I feel like if you erase his story, then you can't, that's not fair, because there's people that are adopted every day into different ethnic families or that have different racial identities. And that doesn't change the person that's being adopted's experience. Like, there are families that are Caucasian that adopt, children that are African American, that are from China. International adoptions from China are still very popular, or still very prevalent, so that these types of adoptions happen all the time. Conversely, white children are adopted by families that are of other ethnicities. So that doesn't change the experience for the child. If they grow up that way, that's how they grew up. They grow up in the culture, correct, because that's their parents. Okay. It's probably confusing to the outside world because they're like, well, that doesn't make sense, but that's the complexity and the beauty of adoption. I hope that makes sense. So anyways, that was that. And then, what was my other thing I was going to clear up? I had this whole thing I was talking about on Instagram, and then my Instagram completely froze. So I was like, I'm just come over here onto YouTube. Was the thing about the Japan story, and somebody was saying that there was some questions too about the information that was in the interview with her brother. Now, I said this a couple days ago, but I knew ahead of time he was going to speak very positively. That's why he wanted to do the interview. He wanted to have a positive interview. I asked him specifically why he reached out to me, and he said it was because I had a large platform of Duggar fans and followers, and he thought using this platform would be a good place for him to share what he was getting. And why did he want to talk was because his photos started circulating on Reddit. And as they started circulating on Reddit, I guess people started sending him messages. and he was starting to receive like a lot of messages on his Instagram, like people that like were sharing the photos from Reddit were then sending him DMs, and then he was getting a lot of like flack from people, I guess. He said that people were like getting upset with him about, nope, I'm not crying. I just have a stuffy nose. No allergies, no crying. He was getting a lot of messages, he said, from people that were like upset with him about how he's like, they were mad because I'm out, like I'm gay, and that the Duggars have this history of homophobia. And he said, and they were really nice to me, and I just want to like tell people that they were really nice to me. I don't want people to think that, like, I think he felt like conflicted in a way where he was feeling like he didn't want to let down his community by saying that he stood up for someone, like that he allowed himself to be in a position where he would have been degraded. And I think he didn't want people to think that if he were in that position, he would have just been okay with it. So I think his point was he just wanted to say to people like, listen, I went to this event and it was a really positive experience. They were very nice to me. I know they don't agree with my life. I know that their faith says things about me that doesn't matter to me. Like that doesn't influence my life. But if they were rude to me, he said, I would have said something, but it just didn't happen. So his whole point was like wanting to clear that specific issue. Yeah, that issue up. And then he also wanted to just let people know that his sister was like, he said that he also started receiving messages because of the stuff that had been shared, I think, from Reddit, that people were messaging him that his sister looked dead inside, like her eyes looked dead. And he said he was getting like so many messages, he had to private his Instagram. So things were being shared on Reddit. I think that's actually where I found it too, but I never reached out to him. And I told you how one of my subscribers literally messaged him. So imagine if just one of my random subscribers messaged him, how many messages he might have received based on that. And that snarker board that's on Reddit has like 66,000 people that follow it. So he could have received hundreds of messages from that, of people just being nosy and snoopy and like wanting to, you know, people will send messages to anyone, you know, just to see if they can get a response. So he said he kept getting messages that his sister looked dead inside, and he wanted to clear that up. And his big thing was like, I want it to be positive, and I want to not have it edited. So I don't want you to like piece things together. He agreed to do I did 3 clips in the beginning that I pieced together just as a teaser to get you guys interested. But throughout the entire interview, I knew what to expect. I also knew he didn't know anything about the Duggars, and he told me ahead of time he knew nothing about the IBLP, and he had just started learning about it. So he was not familiar at all with the group or the cult. So that was what I had. And afterwards, he thanked me. He was very excited about the comments. He was very grateful to see that your guys' support. He felt very positive about the message that he gave. He felt very good about what he was able to accomplish. His goal was to just tell people like, hey, I love my sister. She's a really smart girl. I have complete faith in her. And if she is stuck in this situation, and if something does happen, she has me, I will be there for her. And conversely, he also said that he truly believes that he could be a positive influence for Jed to know someone that is gay, that is a good person, you know? And then another thing was people were like, why do you keep bringing up his sexuality? And that was honestly him, because it was all these messages that he was getting. He was getting so many messages from people about being LGBTQ+ and then being with the Duggars. Like, people were mad at him. So it was something that we were going to talk about, and why we talked about it and why he brought it up, because it was a specific issue that he wanted to address. It wasn't like I was focused on it. It was a big topic of discussion on Reddit. But yeah, I thought he was really positive and I really liked him. And I actually talked to him yesterday. And so he was feeling really good, feeling really happy. And he said, I got what I wanted out of it. And I'm super glad that it was well received. And thank you so much for the opportunity. So I think overall it was good. And yeah, and I know that every family is dynamic and there's good and bad. Oh, and you guys wanted to know one question, and he did answer this. So I asked him what he thought about, because you asked me this a couple nights ago, is what did he know about Josh, and what did he think about his sister marrying into a family where Josh is involved. And he said that Jed is not responsible for his brother's decisions or the things that his brother has done. And so he can't judge Jed, who his sister is marrying, as guilty for something that his brother Josh did. And he can only, it's not anyone's fault in terms of what happened, but it's not Jed's fault, let's just say, right? It's not Jed's responsibility to be held accountable for what his brother Josh did. And I think that's really fair because it's true. Like, just because you have a sibling that does something that's like think of any sibling that has an incarcerated sibling, right? If you have a sibling that has broken the law and done something bad, is that your responsibility that you have a sibling that's done something bad? No, it's not your responsibility. So, and if you know anything about the Duggars, you know that Josh doesn't have the best relationship with his siblings anymore. A lot of his brothers were very upset with him, and specifically John David. And I think because of that, the brothers don't have this like close relationship with Josh. I think when all of that came out, I think there is a distancing from Josh. I don't think that it's like this, Josh is best friends with every single one. And when you guys see the videos, like if you see videos from their house on Christmas and stuff, or like the stuff that Jessa shares, when Josh is around, the only person he's normally talking to is his dad. It's not like his brothers are gathered around him. His brothers are usually like over here, and then Josh is like talking to his dad. I rarely see Josh like talking to his brothers, or if he is, it's not a lot. So I don't know. I think Anna is more integrated into the family, honestly, than Josh. That's just me. But so I don't know, like, and they're like, well, wouldn't they be concerned about the kids being around Josh? Well, I don't know. Like, do you really think if they're living in a completely other, they're not going to be living at the Duggars' house. They're not going to be living with Josh. Josh isn't going to be taking care of the kids. Josh doesn't babysit. So the likelihood that they have kids that are going to be alone with Josh is probably pretty slim to begin with. I think when you think about the kids around Josh, the kids you should be concerned about are his own kids. And that's it. And maybe some of the kids that live still in the Duggars' house. But I don't think he has like a lot of one-on-one interaction with the kids overall. He's pretty heavily monitored, let's just say. Okay, so that's all I had. I just wanted to clear that up. So, yeah. And then, what else was I going to say? There was recently an interview done on another channel with a woman who had filed a declaration in the lawsuit that I was involved in. And I haven't been saying a whole lot about it, but it keeps getting brought up. And so I said some stuff about it on my Twitter. And I just want to say that, like, any of the stuff that comes up that came out from that lawsuit, all of that stuff was dismissed, and they weren't like, the declarations were found irrelevant to the case. So the woman admitted to lying in her interview in the declaration, and I would just honestly suggest that people stop discussing it, because these declarations were, the one she filed was false, and she admitted to making it false, and it just serves no one, it benefits no one to continue to promote these false declarations, and it also helps no one to just continue to, in a way, I guess, push these narratives that are false, because it doesn't help the people that are putting themselves in that position, and it just doesn't help anything, because it just continues to perpetuate the lie. So I don't speak out frequently about it. I responded to some stuff that I found recently, but honestly, I just want to continue to move forward, and I hope everyone does too. And rather than giving people platforms that file false declarations, perhaps we can all just move forward in a positive direction onto something new. So anyways, I might go live tonight in a more like less casual experience, and Rita needs to go, and I'm gonna go work out. So I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for joining. Oh, hold on, Rita. Hold on.